Welcome to Overnight Wisdom, a show where we sit with changemakers, artists, business leaders, and thinkers. Each conversation is an invitation to slow down, to go deeper, and unearth the quiet insights that shape who we are. If you're seeking honest reflections, unexpected wisdom, and a deeper understanding of what it takes to not merely survive, but to thrive, you're in the right place. Today's guest is Dayo Okusami, a deal maker, a lawyer, who has spent 25 years moving through boardrooms and negotiation tables. He shapes energy projects and cross-border investments in Nigeria and beyond. Born in Lagos, raised between Nigeria and the US, Dayo returned home by choice, a rare blend of global training and gritty local hustle. He made partner in 4 years, built a reputation for ironclad integrity. He once turned down $1 million bribe, and now sits at the seam of law, business, and public life. He helps foreign investors work with Nigeria while pushing for the kind of accountability and long-term thinking the country desperately needs. In this conversation, we move from childhood and the lessons of a single mother to what real civic responsibility looks like, to how to hold leaders accountable without losing hope. We talk about work ethic, belonging, and what it means to choose your country, even when it's easier to leave. Let's dive in. Hi, Dayo. How are you?
I'm fine, Chisom. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. It's been years.
It has been. You know, it's funny with text and social media, you think you've seen people, right? But we haven't seen each other in years, but we're communicating. If it's not on LinkedIn, it's by WhatsApp. So
Yeah.
kudos to modern technology, eh?
Absolutely. And I think the last time I saw you, just to even put it in context about how long ago that was, I don't think I've had any of my children at the time, right? It's like I didn't even have my youngest the last time I saw you in person.
Yes.
Or my
Wow.
oldest. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pre-COVID.
Yes, that's like 6 years since I
Yikes.
last saw you in person. But I mean, because we talk, I think
Yeah. No, you did put it in good context. Wow. Okay, so it's 6 years then. I would
It's
have
6
thought it was
years.
2-3 years ago.
Yeah. It's been a while.
Time flies. Yeah.
It does. But I'm really happy to have you here. I know this will be a great conversation, and I just like to jump right into the meat of things, right?
Jump away.
Okay. So you're known as this, high shot lawyer, right? You built a life negotiating multi-million-dollar deals. You've also shaped the legal energy landscape and beyond that within a Nigerian context, and I think also internationally. But I do want to go back and start at the beginning. What was your childhood like, and how did it shape the person you are today?
My childhood was it was a bit interesting. My parents lived in the US, right? And funny story, my mom and dad lived in the US, but I was born in Nigeria. And let me tell you what that means. At 8 months, my mom, who lived in DC with my dad, flew back to Nigeria to have me. She wanted to be home around family and her own mom, and it was just generally easier to fly in between the US and Nigeria. So the younger part of my childhood was actually spent in the US. One of the shaping things is that US background kind of mindset. But also, my parents got divorced, and then my mom moved back to Nigeria. So I was, for a bit, bi-coastal, floating in between Nigeria and the US. Now, I am very much Nigerian. If you ask me, I was born and bred in Nigeria. I'm a Lagos person, but there are US influences. But also, my dad's a doctor. My mom has a PhD in psychology. They were also highly cerebral and driven. So I was raised basically by my mom as a single mom. And she was a very, very hard worker, worked in academia and the civil service. So I think I was very much shaped by a number of these experiences, both with the nuclear family and then kind of cross-culturally as well.
Really interesting. I was just reflecting on how your mom did that, in that she was 8 months pregnant and she came back home to have a kid, whereas it's the reverse, right? People want to have kids and they go abroad. I find that really fascinating.
Correct. And that's what, and it's a very interesting point. Now, of course, for the audience and also for you, I turned 50 this year. So literally thank you, but this was 50 years ago, right? So within maybe 6 weeks of me being born in Nigeria, Lagos, maybe 2 months maximum, my mom was back in the US. Okay.
Damn.
Now, if you look at the here and now, people would more likely than not go from Nigeria to the US. It wouldn't be the other way around, but it was very much Nigeria was a very different time then. And I know to some of the people who are younger, they're like, okay, here we go. Another old man talking about how it was in the good old days. But that's the way it was. You actually had a parity between the Nigerian naira and the dollar. People were educated abroad and came back to Nigeria. That was before what we call the brain drain really started. So Nigeria was a very different society back then.
That's really interesting. And thanks for that context, because for me, what it also clarifies is, I mean, I've been on this whole schmeal about just how terrible our governance is and leadership and how we need to do a better job to get our country where it needs to be. And it
Yes.
sounds to me like we were better off 50 years ago than we are now. So we're deteriorating.
It is interesting. I think anyone who's been honest will say our economy has not kept a pace with the rest of the world. Okay. There's this famous story about how Nigeria used to be agriculturally independent. Nigeria exported the first seedlings for palm oil. So the palm kernel, Nigeria sent it to Malaysia because we used to grow it here. And now Malaysia is one of the largest exporters of palm oil, whereas up until only about 5 years ago, Nigeria was not doing anywhere close to those numbers. You do have companies in the last 5 to 10 years getting into commodities, including palm oil, but there has been a regression. The Nigerian naira was 1 to 1. So it was on par with the US dollar around when I was born. You cannot believe that. I'll even blow your mind. There was a point where the Nigerian naira was stronger than the US dollar. Now the
That's wild.
Nigerian naira, yeah, yeah, yeah. That, now the Nigerian naira, you need 1,500 of it to buy $1. So the economy has definitely suffered. Those who have lived as long as I have or longer say that things are not as good as they were.
Mm.
So we must be honest with ourselves that if you look at a timeline of how the economy is, there are arguments that would support, and there's data to support that the Nigerian economy has shrunk, if you want to use a worst case scenario, or if you want to be polite, you'll say it has not expanded as much
Mm.
as or as fast as the rest of the world, which in real terms is shrinkage.
Like in my entire lifetime, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And I think what you say, and I do want to also spend more time to talk about governance and leadership in Nigeria and also within like this larger African context, because it's something I'm really interested in. But first, I do want to come back as well to your childhood. I've known you now for some years. And
Yeah.
I know that there is that relentless drive for excellence in your life. So, yes, I want to contextualize this by saying you are a Nigerian. Excellence is the minimum, it's the standard, it's the expectation. But you just move differently nonetheless. So, I do want to ask, is there a lesson from a parent, a book, a struggle that kind of shaped who you are, how you pursue excellence, and also how you parents your own children?
Yes, I think there are a number of influences. I believe everyone's most powerful influence are the parents. And as a parent now, I tell my kids this: parents are people, right? When you're younger, they're these demigods that can do no wrong. And then you get older. I sat at this table that I'm sitting at now. My mom came to visit me on my birthday. She's 77. And we had conversations about things I remembered when I was 5 years old that she didn't believe I could remember till I gave her details. So, shaping by the parents. If you have two highly driven parents, that's invariably going to drive you. My mom was quite strict, and she had to be, and I'm glad she was because she raised three boys. I'm the first of three boys. So essentially, she raised three boys by herself, and you're going to have to be tough to keep a handle on three boys who are very close in age. But she was a disciplinarian, but she also pushed academic excellence. You will not slack off. But she balanced it. She used to say, not everybody has an A brain, right? But you be able to look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself, I did the best I can. If you have a C brain, and that's not to be denigrated, but not everyone's a genius, right?
Mm.
If you have a C brain, then get a C. But don't have a C brain and give up and get an E. So she always pushed us, you will do the best you can. So that kind of hard work ethic, one from the parents. Then everybody talks about the Nigerian excellence, but I'd like to contextualize it as well. There is the Nigeria side of it and there's the US side of it. US is very much a meritocracy. Some people say
It used to
very,
be.
I think it is, but in a different way, right?
Mm,
One of my colleagues who worked in my office, she posted on LinkedIn yesterday, she got into Harvard Law. She's a brilliant, brilliant lawyer, right? Now, I take that as the vision of what's going on in the US. Of course, they're more complex and layered things, especially with the immigration tied to the schools and everything. But here is someone who worked at a firm who I know is a very
mm,
smart person who's at Harvard Law School now. Now, I'm not
mm,
being self-deprecating when I say I don't think I could make it into Harvard Law School because I'm more of a hard worker than a brainiac. So, US rewards excellence. Some
true.
would say it's a bit monetarily focused, but that is the way of the world. Nigeria, we are always the drivers, right?
Mm,
Socially, lately in music, fashion, but in
mm,
business as well. A lot of other Africans say, well, the Nigerians, they're overly aggressive. Well, we have to be. Let me tell you why. The 220 million of us now, we'll get to the governance issue, but everybody has to fight
mm,
to be who they want to be. And that drive, the country teaches you that. You see other people working hard, and you know, if I don't work just as hard at a minimum, I'm going to get
mm,
left behind. So
mm,
we've talked about parents, we've talked about the environment, and then, if it's how I ended up being in law, there are two ways, which I think is a lesson for a lot of people. Law, which I ended up being pretty good at, was my third career choice. I wanted to be an astronaut. Okay. That was the first job, but hey,
mm,
that probably wasn't going to be realistic. But then I wanted to be
mm,
a pilot. And back then, it was very difficult for you to want to be a pilot if you didn't have 20/20 vision. I've been wearing glasses since I was 9 years old. Pilot didn't work out. Then I wanted to be an architect. I thought my technical drawing teacher had something against me because I was always failing technical drawing. My best friend, who's quite a successful architect now, he said, you know what, we're going to prove that Mr. So and so doesn't like you and is marking you down. So we did an exam and swapped papers. But that's the first time I got an A and the first time he got a D. So I realized that technical drawing and architecture wasn't for me. And then how did I really become a lawyer? I'll say three paths. I'm trying to figure out what to do on my university entrance exams. I used to watch this show back in the day called LA Law. LA Law had these glamorous Los Angeles lawyers driving around wearing good suits. And I was like, wow, okay, I want to be like them. Somebody said that, well, you like to talk a lot, so maybe you should be a lawyer. That's what happened. But it taught me an important lesson that I still say to today. There's a saying I read somewhere. It says your destiny lies on the path you took to avoid it.
I love that. Okay.
Your destiny lies on the path you took to avoid it. So every other chicane and everything that I thought was taking me where I wanted was leading me to where I'm supposed to be now.
Thanks for sharing that. I also wanted to, I guess, agree with what you were saying around it's interesting being at the intersection of Nigeria and the US. Spent many formative years in the US, and of course, I'm Nigerian.
Hmm.
And there is something that meshes quite well with the cultures in terms of the goal getting, the if you
Correct.
work hard enough, you will get that because that is true. No matter how much the government in the US and Nigeria try to make it really difficult. Like you can
Yeah,
still hustle and get where you need to, but there is that collective feeling of you have to work your ass off to
absolutely.
like get where you want to because no one will hand it to you. You have to earn it. And I think when you're in a
Hmm.
country of so many people, and I think at least from what I understand, for those of us who have the privilege of going or living abroad, is there is this expectation as well. At least I had it that, okay, I know how much is being paid for me to have this education. So I have to do the best that I can because this is a whole lot of money, right? Where
Yeah,
I come
yeah.
from. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Hmm.
absolutely. Nigerians, but also parents worldwide. I
Mm,
told my daughter this last week. I said, parents always want their children to do better than them.
mm,
So sometimes we put our kids under too much pressure. We
mm-hmm,
put too much of our own expectations on them. Sometimes we want to live vicariously through them. And we have to remember a couple of things. It's their life. You're there to guide them, They're not your doll or toy. But, parents also have to be aware, but also kind to themselves as well. Going back to my previous point of parents are people. There is no book. And you can read as many books as possible. You're learning as you go along and trying to do the best you can for your children. But it's that drive. Because here's the thing. I've studied in the UK and also worked in London as well. And it's a very different culture from the US, right? And some people like it, some people don't, but it's very interesting in seeing the dichotomy of what we call drive. A lot of people in the UK might find that Nigerian or US drive a bit abrasive. And it's all about what you want and the quality of life. But there's an important thing that, we have to be honest, because of the way the economy is in Nigeria now, right? You almost have to be rich to live a middle class lifestyle. And some of the things we take for granted, and I tell people this, my dad still lives in the US. My youngest brother lives in the US. And I'm glad that they do. My dad's a doctor. My brother's a lawyer. So he works in media and tech and does a lot of stuff in that area. But my dad, who's a very hardworking, smart psychiatrist, is retired now. I don't believe he would survive in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So my youngest brother lives in the US. He studied in Nigeria, did law school in Nigeria, but he doesn't have that do anything for success mindset that a lot of Nigerians have. So he's like, I'm gonna live in the US. Now he lives a very good life in the US, right? But if he worked the way he works in the US in Nigeria, he would be nowhere as successful. Do you understand? He's,
Yeah.
I would say, living the American dream.
Yeah.
Big house, 3 kids doing well, wife's a doctor, but that edge that you need in Nigeria to make it there, you
Yeah.
don't need it in the US. You can work very hard and still do okay. Your kids will go to a decent school. You'll be able to get a mortgage. You'll drive a nice car. You'll go on a holiday. You will provide for your family in a way that you want to, that is not very present in Nigeria.
Yeah, yeah. In Nigeria, you have to be rich, and that's something I also identify, whenever I'm back home. And I've been reflecting a lot about this because, of course, I've been more political this year. So I'm looking at
Yes,
the
I have
continent.
noticed.
I'm looking a lot at the continent. I'm looking a lot at what's happening in Nigeria. And, I was just reflecting on, I don't think Nigeria currently is a place my children can grow up.
Right.
And that was so painful to admit.
Yeah.
That I don't see a future for them right now the way things are if we don't change a lot. So, of course, I'm thinking, all right, Chisom, you can't just complain. How can you contribute to this change? But right now, right this moment, if nothing changes, there is no future for my kids there because I want better for them. I don't want this hustle and the struggle. You can still hustle a quarter as much as people do in Nigeria and be a millionaire. But in Nigeria, you have to multiply that by 6, 7, 8, 10 times.
Absolutely. It's a very interesting thing. I agree, but I disagree respectfully as well. Let me tell you why. I moved back to Nigeria. So I started working, went for my master's degree in London, and a lot of people were figuring out how do we get a job in the UK? How do we stay behind? I got a couple of job interviews and I actually got a job offer at a law firm. But I moved back to Nigeria for a salary that was maybe 1/10 of the salary. And everyone thought I was crazy. And I said, well, how can we all stay in London or the US and whatever and complain about Nigeria if we won't go back and try and make a change ourselves? And then, mind you, this is 20 years ago. They're like, oh, but there's no electricity, the roads are bad, and this. And I was like, yes, but you're sitting in London. How can you go back for a fraction of your salary? Here's an important thing. I said it then, still say it now, even though things have opened up. Someone with my background with a Nigerian education, a UK education, international exposure, I would be more valuable at home in Lagos than in London. I wanted to practice law. Law is one of the most difficult careers to break into at the very highest levels. And I looked at the lawyers in London and the partners in London, and there weren't a number of people of color. 20 years later, we've got a whole lot more, but I read somewhere that less than 3% of the partners in top London firms. So I'd rather come back to Nigeria. I made a partner 4 years after I got back to Nigeria. And here's the thing. And I go back to London and I'm in a meeting in one of the law firms that had offered me a job. And in that meeting, myself and my managing partner then and now were the only people of color in that room. But more importantly, if I had taken that job, I would not be sitting in that
Of
meeting room
course.
either. But I will not be a hypocrite. My two children are in the UK now studying. But I told them, and I always instill in them, you're probably Nigerian. I'm giving you opportunities. However, we must, even if we can live here, try and imbibe the Nigerianness and export it
Mm,
because we must show
of
these
course.
examples of excellence. They must know who they are from
Of
a
course.
Nigerian perspective. I always tell everyone that lives abroad, including my brother, I'm like, you haven't been home in 2 years. Bring them back, give them a sense of home. Because at the end of the day, not to quote Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, no place like home. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hear you for sure. I think I'm quite proud that my almost 6-year-old, if you ask her where she's from, she'll just tell you Nigeria, right?
fantastic.
And so for me, that is a win.
Yeah.
And I think like I'm hardcore Nigerian, no matter the other
Oh, I
nationalities that I hold, like everyone would tell you Chisomi is a Nigerian.
yeah.
And I appreciate that my mother also did that for me. I guess in framing it more from like this long term. So I'm a broken record on this in terms of like in 2050, Nigeria will be the third most populated country in the world. In 2100, we're going to be the second, right? And currently, more from that institutional framework and infrastructure perspective, we are not at a decent place to manage 230 million people, never mind billion, right? People
I
in the
fully
world. So that's
agree.
kind of just what I'm looking at in terms of my kids. Your kids are a bit older than mine, but my kids are quite young in
Yeah.
comparison. And it's like, what is the future that I want to see for them? But of course, I agree with you in that for me, I can't just sit here and complain. I think I've had different stints in Nigeria where I come.
Yeah.
Nigeria breaks me down a bit, punches me
Yeah.
around. I have the privilege of living and then I
Yeah.
regroup and then I decide to come back again. And now I'm trying to do it again. You know, that's what I'm reflecting on in terms of I also have a responsibility in doing whatever I can, however I can, in shaping that. Something you did say, though, that I do want to point out, which I think it's good for those of us who've studied abroad, but for the people who study in Nigeria, for example, their education, their qualifications is not as valued as those of us who come from abroad. And that is also, for me, I think, problematic, right? Because it's still, in some sense, pandering to the idea that Western education, which is better than our education, and people who have the opportunity to study abroad, then have more privileges than those who hustled to go to, law school there or medical school in
Yeah.
Usuka or wherever
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Well, this is true, but the truth is there's stratification in economies and societies everywhere. I mentioned somebody that went to Harvard. In the US, the person that goes to Harvard and the person that does not will get a job quicker. In the
Yeah,
UK, the person that goes to Cambridge and
true.
those that do not will go. My daughter, my daughter got her A level results on Thursday. So she's gonna be a doctor. She's got into medicine in a university in the UK. But when I'm reading the newspaper, I saw an interesting fact just on that Thursday. The highest levels of A and A star were from the London area. The lowest was in the United Kingdom Northeast. So like Newcastle, Leeds, and those areas were are working class areas. So there's always going to be that stratification. But let me tell you one thing that people I don't think amplify enough. I'll start with my most recent example. The lady who's in Harvard Law studied in Nigeria. A number of
True.
Nigerians, a number of
True.
Nigerians finish their university here and go and excel elsewhere.
Yeah.
If you mentioned, like you talk about a doctor that graduates from the University of Lagos or Nsukka, barring a professional qualification, can go to the UK and the US and become a doctor there. So our education system is very strong. My university, I went to University of Jos. So the education system here is quite strong. I think it has faltered as I have grown older because it was very important for me when I was much younger that my children go to university in Nigeria and then they
Mm,
could do postgraduate degree abroad
mm,
because I wanted them to have that Nigerianness and the base.
mm.
However, after a few years, I changed my mind because I saw the quality of education in the Nigerian universities. It is still better than I think a lot of people give it credit for, but it is far off from 20 years ago. So, but there is that recognition, but there are also a number of people. There are programs. One of them, I met a young gentleman. I spoke at the University of Oxford earlier this year at their business school. And a young Nigerian gentleman comes up to me like, "Hello, sir. My name is this. I work at Bank of America. I just like what you said." I was like, "Oh, okay. And so where did you go to university?" He went to a Nigerian university.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
went to a Nigerian university, did an internship at Bank of America in London, got a job, Bank of America London. He schooled entirely in Nigeria. He said his first trip out of the country was on that internship the year before,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I will always have an honest conversation about the Nigerian situation, but Nigerian education is still pushing out people who get into the best schools and best jobs internationally. And of course, there will always be a stratification, but that's life, isn't it?
Yes, true. I wanted to maybe challenge on what I mean, you have contextualized it that the education has faltered. I don't know that I believe that the Nigerian educational system is great. What I believe is that Nigerians are brilliant. And when you're in class with a bunch of brilliant people, that pushes you to be better than you think you can be. So for me, that's kind of something because I did 2 years of boarding school in Nigeria. It is the toughest 2 years of my academic life, period. And I have a lot of
Yeah,
degrees after that. But that made me so smart. And
yeah,
anything else they tossed at me at uni, at postgrad, I'm like, are you joking?
yeah,
Did you know what
yeah.
I did in like SS2 and SS3? Like senior secondary school was hectic. But I don't think necessarily that it was the system. It was the people around me. It was my fellow students who were just like batting so high that I
Yeah,
needed to catch up in so many
yeah.
ways.
I fully agree with you. I always tell my clients and friends this. My job is not to be the Minister of Tourism for Nigeria. I will have hard conversations. The Nigerian education system is not as bad as it is made out to be, but
Mm,
it is far off from where it was and where it should be. If
mm,
it were great, my kids will be in school here.
mm.
So I
Yeah.
fully agree with you there. However, my kids went to most of their secondary school, just around the corner from where I live. And
Mm,
I liked that for them.
yeah.
But I also started to see, and not everyone is fortunate enough to be able to afford or offer these opportunities to their kids, right? So, but I'll say two things. It is because I saw once my kids left, they were both in secondary school. My son virtually finished secondary school in Nigeria. But when he moved to the UK for A levels, I saw the difference in a term. My daughter, who I wanted to finish, but I said let both of them go together so they'll be in the same school and have each other. I saw the difference in the teaching and how and what they did. So
Mm,
absolutely, you're right. I would be wildly incorrect to compare the two systems. But you
mm.
touched upon something. That grit that it puts you in, whew, it takes us far and wide.
Yes, Nigerians don't play. I mean, they are the smartest people I know. And I think in
Hmm.
many ways, that's why this whole, don't you know I'm Nigerian, kind of like confidence that comes with
Yeah.
it. Because I mean, it's
Which
battles.
some would
Like
say arrogance as well. You Nigerians are so arrogant. We're not arrogant. We're just, we're confident.
we just know what we're made of. And it's because we've been through it. So I think, yes, definitely. Okay, great. I do want to have a conversation about, we've been talking a bit about the macroeconomic and like education landscape. I do want to talk about energy and climate and the politics currently within the context of the work that you
Okay.
do. As we know, Africa is like afterthoughts in a lot of like global decisions or discussions that we're part of. How do you think that as a continent, even just zoning out of Nigeria as a country, how can we get to tables and negotiate on equal footing? Like from your view, what does Africa need to leapfrog into the future we should have been a part of 30 years ago?
We need to be deliberate. I was going to say intentional, but I feel that word's been flogged to death the last few years. We need to be deliberate and focused. Deliberate, focused, and co-joined. I'm not saying joined, co-joined, like Siamese
Mm,
twins
mm,
across the Africa continent. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I'll start with the co-joining. For there to be meaningful change, African countries have to have a uniformity of purpose and pursue that purpose in a uniform, co-joined. There are 54 countries, right? And there's not always an alignment in purpose. If you don't have that, it's always going to be fragmented. So without that co-joining, and I recognize that each country might have its own objectives, but there needs to be broad-based objective because, and not to dwell on colonialism, you, Chisom, as a study of history, right? You remember the colonial conference in Berlin, right? The European powers got together and said, okay, let's not fight it. Let's divide the continent up. So we must do the opposite. All the African countries have to come together and say, where can we align and push? And on energy, this is the most important thing because we have collectively the largest reserves of just about anything. But this fragmentation allows exploitation at worst and at best does not allow the optimal use by a country of its own resources. Let me say that again. It does not allow the optimum use of a country's own resources. Why would a country in Africa not optimally use its own resources? Why? Because there are governance challenges. There is not a uniformity of purpose. So we get dictated to, and then we just take it. We take the short term benefits and not think about the long term goals, right? There's this line I always tell people. I have a few mentees. I said, pick a career, not a job. I said, a job will give you money now. You can have 3 jobs, but what would you want to be doing that job in 20 years? Pick a career that might pay you less, but has a runway. So if we came together on an energy policy basis and picked an African career, then we'd be unstoppable on the maximization of our energy resources, our mineral resources, and bringing that advantage home as opposed to exporting it.
I love that. I love the frame as well around they got together in Berlin, they shredded us up. Now we have to do the work of coming back together. Absolutely. Because it's also interesting to see how there's very little like a country like Eswatini, for example, can do
Yes.
on the negotiating table. You're a tiny country,
Yeah.
right? So I think there's, of course, value in how can we bridge that gap? And with this, I want to segue into asking you this question from a Nigerian context. You've shared earlier about Nigeria will be a very populated country by 2050 and 2100.
Yeah.
And as of 2023, which means it's probably gotten worse now, Nigeria has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world. So 20 million children are out of school in
Wow.
Nigeria. It's insane. That's like
I
entire
did.
countries.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. That's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
But you see, it goes back. Yeah. Sorry, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, so we're lacking in healthcare, we're lacking in primary education, we're lacking in infrastructure. In your view, though, what does it take to change? Because I'm talking to people, to Nigerians, and people are just like, nothing is going to change. So there's this sense of apathy. So what does it take to create impactful change in the country? Accountability.
But you see, too many people point the finger when we talk about accountability. Look at the other fingers pointing back at you. So again, accountability must start from self. What am I fulfilling my civic duties? Did I go out and vote? Who did I vote for? Now, I will understand as living in Nigeria and a Nigerian the challenges with voting. And this apathy sometimes comes from people feeling that their voices are not heard. But then if you give up, then what change can you expect? We must, but then there's the accountability of the elected officials. We cannot say that because the person I wanted to be in power is not there, therefore I'm not going to hold them accountable. However reason they are there, they are there. So you must hold them accountable. One of the challenges is in most countries that are on an upward trajectory, they prioritize education. How do they do that? By allocating a larger part of their budget to education. Sometimes in some countries, the largest allotment in the budget is education, because there must be a recognition that humans and people, the citizens, are your greatest resource than your natural resources. Because if they're educated, they will optimize the natural resource your citizens as a natural resource are more important than gold, petroleum, energy.
Yes.
Because if you don't have a highly educated and motivated citizenry, then your next most important natural resource, which is in the ground, will not be optimized for you and will be optimized for another country.
Yes.
So we need to play a game of educate our citizens. This fact you gave me, I did not know this. It's a crying shame because Nigerians are known to be highly educated wherever we go. But I also tell people this. When I was in school, people used to say, "Oh, I meet a lot of Nigerians, they're this, they're this, they're this." I said, "No, hang on. There are
Mm.
more people in Nigeria that have not
Yes.
seen a plane than you see in London, New York. Our citizens are the most important natural resource. We must educate them, or when we're going nowhere. Everything else is just talk."
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that you can even see from countries that have invested in education, like Finland, like Rwanda, like
Correct.
Vietnam, for example. Once
Absolutely.
they made it their priority, they
Yeah.
started seeing measurable economic growth. They started seeing higher life expectancy. They
Yeah.
started seeing political stability. Because I think the life expectancy in Nigeria is still around like 50 something years old, right?
That is correct.
Whereas in a country like Norway, it's like 80 or got something high. This is also why I think, in terms of like, so you talk about accountability, and I do want to come back to that, is people don't know what they should be demanding or expecting of their leaders. And I think
Yeah.
that's also a challenge, that civic understanding, that education, that knowledge about, if education is failing, who in my local government area. I see in the US, for example, where people are trying to rally folks to go vote, and they say,
Hmm.
call your representatives. I don't know my representative in Lekki. Who are they? So there's also that disconnect from governance beyond the person running for president and vice president. Like, what's your take on that?
There is a disconnect because I'm embarrassed to say at least you don't live in Nigeria, so you maybe
Mm,
have an excuse. I don't know who my rep is either. I don't know who my local rep is.
mm,
But here's the problem. There is that apathy where you have a situation where I am my own government in the sense I
mm.
have to provide my lights, I have to provide my water, I have to provide my security. We just switch off. The unfortunate side of Nigeria's get up and go and get on with it is we do not hold elected leaders and our government as accountable as we would in other countries.
Mm.
That mindset has to change. And when I say that, I'm talking to myself as well.
Yeah.
But therein lies that problem. Because Nigerians have been so disappointed with the lack of proper governance, they just get on with it.
They give
Because what
up.
else are you going to do? I like to put a positive spin on it by saying they get on with it, but you're absolutely right.
Mm.
They give up because you complain, you seek this change, it does not happen, and then you got to work, you got to eat, you
Yeah.
got to provide for your
Yeah.
family. And if you complain that there is not enough electricity and you don't go work hard enough to get a generator, an inverter, or solar panels, then you're going to live in darkness, right?
Absolutely.
So that grit, it's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. Daya, I know you work with a lot of businesses, especially like foreign businesses that are looking to enter Nigeria, and you make that process as easy as humanly possible for
We
them.
try.
So, in your experience, have you been in a situation where your love for Nigeria conflicted with the realities of doing business in the country? Why do
Yeah.
you continue to do it?
But why I still do it is I am one of the lucky people. I enjoy my work. So I've been a lawyer 25 years and I'm looking forward to going to work tomorrow. Okay? So, but there are conflicts because I am a Nigerian lawyer who's proudly Nigerian, who wants to see better for Nigerian. But my firm Templars, most of our clients are international. And you must disconnect business objectives from nationalistic bents. I am a lawyer. I'm able to do that from a practical perspective. I will emphasize my Nigerianness by the excellence of what I do. I work with a number of international companies and organizations that, let me blow your mind. What they want would be better for the country than what some of our officials want. And they will come
Mm-hmm.
to me and almost ask me the same.
Mm-hmm.
Say, Dio, what we're proposing would work for Nigeria. Why
Mm-hmm.
don't they want to sign up for this? So now I'm feeling bad that I can't believe they can't see the advantage of this from the Nigerian side Why would an international company want to do better for us than Nigerians? I promise you that happens more often than you would think as well.
I think a lot of it is also greed or maybe lack of vision.
Yeah.
I think, as you said earlier, there's this really short-term view. Like, how does this line my pockets in a month or in 2 or in 3, rather than seeing that long-term vision? And it is a shame that people from the outside actually have more passion to see the country succeed. Sure, they also have benefits than some of our leaders sitting in political offices. And I think that is the shame, isn't it?
It is. It is. The intent and the purpose of seeking political office is the greater good. Look, it's not a Nigerian problem. If you go to any country, their citizens complain about politicians who are self-serving. I would not be wrong to say the perception is that it's a bit more acute in Nigeria.
If we could inherit a stronger continent than the one we grew up in, what do we have to change now?
We need to change the strength in which we hold our governments and our public officials accountable. We need to hold ourselves accountable. We need to help more back home. And help more back home doesn't mean you have to move back. No, not every Nigerian or every Rwandan or every Kenyan has to go back to their country to make a difference. But as you are sitting in London, Norway, Japan, the US, how are you contributing to things back home? Are you sending money back home not to necessarily build a house? And I'm saying, take care of yourself, start a scholarship to help children that are either related to you or otherwise. If the government won't do it, we need to collectively do that for our homes. Be able to look yourself in the mirror wherever you're sitting in the world and say, this is the one thing I did for the country that wasn't self-serving. If every single African expat did that, within a generation, you will see the change that you want to see. And I'm very specific about this point. I said within a generation. A lot of times, we as Africans want to see immediate change, which I do not think is realistic. You need to realize it takes a generation of consistent change making to see the beginnings, not the change, the beginnings of the change you want to. So we must be deliberate and consistent to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree. I think consistency is a big one. I think across the African continent, we just need to be consistent and contribute. Like what you also said earlier about accountability is important, because then you have to say, what am I doing? How am I contributing to the future that I want to see for my country or continent, rather than being like apathetic? Dayo, I want to come to some personal reflections and wisdom. If you think about
I don't know if I'm wise.
I think you're wise. If you think about the little boy you once were, what would he say if he sees your life now?
Well, I hope he would be proud of me. I'm lucky enough to have achieved, and I keep saying it, and apologies, I just turned 50 last month, so maybe still new to me. But as a 50-year-old, I've achieved most of what I wanted. So I hope he'll be proud of what he's become. As the older one is talking to the younger one, I would say stick to the path. It's going to be rough. The life is going to kick your ass, but stick to the path.
I love that. I love that. Okay. What is the hardest personal or ethical choice you've had to make in your career?
True story.
Tell it. We like the truth.
I was advising a company and I wrote some legal advice that they didn't like. Now, a bank needed my legal advice to take the transaction forward. And somebody related to the company offered me $1 million to change the legal advice. Yeah. And I said no. I did not have $1 million anywhere. I'd never seen $1 million. And I said, listen, if I wrote that, it'll be wrong. It'll possibly be criminal. But I said the most important thing to me that I learned from my mom is my name. I want my name to be my name. And I want my kids to see me and hear my name and not be ashamed of me. So that most importantly, I want to be able to sleep in my bed without worrying if the police are going to come haul me out of bed. But I thought about it. That's life-changing money. But at the end of the day, money comes, money goes. You cannot pay for peace of mind. Being a lawyer in my sphere, you see a lot of people who are wealthy beyond belief. Some of them are good and they have achieved nirvana. Some do not have peace of mind. So peace of mind is key.
Not having peace is expensive, you
Very,
know?
very.
I love what you say there as well, because it just reminds me of integrity. At the end of the day, you need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and be happy with
Absolutely.
who you see. So,
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, when it's done, what is your hope for what your children and the world remember about you?
It'll be the children first because my children are the most important things to me. So how they view me is more important than how the world views me. I would hope my children would look at me and say, we had a father that loved us. We had a father that supported us and provided us opportunities. We had a father who couldn't dance to save his life and couldn't sing to save his life, but he worked hard. Once I have that from my kids, then I'm happy. The world is not as important, but to answer the question without avoiding it, to say he was a professional, decent, a bit emotional. Some clients say, there's a Nigerian saying, the outsider cry more than the bereaved. So with my clients, sometimes I fight harder than they would have with good and bad consequences. Most of them appreciate it. I think one of the reasons I've been successful apart from my work ethic is I take a client as my own and a
I
decent guy.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I think that makes also the best service providers, right? Because when you have people who are ready to fight with you and bat with you and sometimes even push harder than you would where you don't have to, I think that's what makes you successful. That's why you've been able to amass the type of respect that you have within the sector, within the country and the field. So I think that's a great thing. And then something else I was thinking about, like it's almost a
Yeah.
crime as a Nigerian to not know how to dance. What happened?
I don't know. Listen, you got to blame my mom and dad. My dad can dance. My mom can dance. I have been told that I am poorly coordinated. So I guess something had to give. So
Yeah, I
maybe
guess you
this is the
can't win
price
it
I pay.
all.
Yeah,
You can't be a
exactly.
great lawyer and a great dancer. Something has to give.
Apparently you cannot. So my dancing is atrocious. Even I know this. But I've learned to live with it and lean into it.
Okay, so now I'm going to go into a quick round. I have a
Okay.
couple of questions. Let's see how fast we can get through. What book changed the way you think?
So it's called Aesop's Tales. Aesop was an ancient Greek poet. I used to read his tales, and Greek philosophy was just it. So, but there were two. I'm going to cheat. The next one is The
Okay.
Firm by John Grisham.
Why do you believe in the law?
It is the great leveler. It will level the high and low. And while our society doesn't always enforce that, it does level the high and low. It balances. The law is everything. The universe has a law. What we do here on earth is just our interpretation of it, but there's a universal law and it provides order in chaos.
Who would play you in the movie of your life?
Ooh, it'll be Daniel Kaluuya. He's a British actor.
I like him, of course.
Oh, you
He
like
was
him?
in
Oh, you
Get
know?
Out. Yeah, he was
Yes,
in
he
Get
was in Get
Out.
Out. Yes, yes. Why I hesitated, I think I was struggling between him and Damson Idris, but Damson is way too good looking compared to me. And Daniel is good looking. Hey, listen, I don't think I'm bad looking if I can say
No.
so myself.
I was going to say, like, you're a
But
good looking guy.
thank you, thank you. But Daniel has that kind of quiet kind of depth that I like. So I'd say Daniel.
I asked another guest this question like 2 weeks ago on my podcast,
Yeah.
and he said Damson Idris. So I
Oh
guess
yeah.
there's a thing happening there. If you could teach one lesson through your work, what would it be?
Hard work will beat talent 9 times out of 10.
Absolutely.
Somebody said many years ago, you just blew up. I said it took me 10 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah. I think people don't really see the grind. They just see it when you're shiny. Like they don't
Of
see the
course.
hustle,
Of course, of course, of course. But you see, the important thing, and I tell my younger colleagues as well, be like a duck. See a duck on water, it's just floating along, but it's paddling furiously under. So be like a duck.
Absolutely. What have you had to unlearn in order to become the man you are today?
Don't say everything that's on your mind, right? Sit back, think about it. Like anyone else, you have human emotions and you speak when you're in emotional state. Take a beat. Sometimes take 10. Words are like arrows. Once you've let them loose, you can't draw them back. And they can harm sometimes irreparably. So one thing I've had to unlearn is a quick reaction to everything. I still react quick, But if I look at myself now and 5 years ago, if I look at myself now and 10 years ago, even I had someone say to me, wow, you're a lot more considered now. I said, yeah, you have to unlearn these things. So I would say be considered. My boss, he always said, he always says, be considered before you respond.
I love that. Be considered before you respond. I really like that. I think we can all definitely benefit from that. What are you still becoming?
A better lawyer. I am a good lawyer, but here's the thing. We say lawyers who are in law firms, they say you're in practice. You're practicing law. You practice every single day till you stop. You learn a new thing every day. I was in a meeting last week with negotiations. One of my team members, she became a lawyer 4 years ago. She taught me something. So you must always be, but it goes to whether you're a lawyer or not, right? You must always be open to learning. So I am learning to be a better lawyer because I am a better lawyer this Sunday than I was last Sunday before I went into 4 day negotiations, where I was the most senior lawyer and I had 3 team members. Each and every one of them taught me at least one thing this week. You must be open to it. We're always
Yes.
learning. So I'm
Yes.
becoming a better lawyer.
I love that. I love that view because I often reflect on this and I say, the day I wake up and feel like I don't have anything else to learn, I should be dead. You know?
Correct. And may
Yeah.
you never get to that stage.
No. Okay. What are you aspiring to in your personal life?
Be a better dad because also you always have to look at being better. I had my kids, at least for this part of the world, relatively young. My son will be 20. So not young. I had my first child at 30, right? But I'm entering a different stage in my life where I wanted kids early so I'm young enough when they get to this age. My son is going into his final year in university next month. My daughter enters university next month. So I'm trying to be a better father for them for this stage in their life. Career guidance, work ethic, building just a better personal relationship with them. So for me, more important than the work, the most important thing and who I'm hoping to become is a better father to my kids.
And you do spend quite a bit of time with your kids. Like I'm sometimes when we're chatting, you're jetting around the world with your kids as well. I think that's really
Yes.
nice.
Well, yes, but also here's the thing, and it goes to something I mentioned earlier when we're doing the pre-call. I told your husband I would love to have kids in the background. Here I am at home alone. The kids have moved out. They went to boarding school. Now they're in university. So I spend time with them, but not as much as I'd like to, because also they're living their own lives now as well. So the important thing I would say is enjoy those moments when they're young because you wake up one day and they're adults. I spend as much time, but they actually live in the UK now. So what I do is make sure whenever I'm getting anywhere, I always stop in London, even if it's just to see them a day, even if it's just to have lunch with them. I try as much as possible, but it's nowhere near enough. But they must live life as well, and they must live their own lives. So here we are.
What are you aspiring to in your professional life besides becoming a better lawyer?
Well, I am a product of mentorship. I am at the stage I've been a lawyer 25 years. Professionally, I want to help others because you must pass it on. It's no longer about me. Yes, I want to be a better lawyer, I want to stack a bit more cash, all those normal things. But more important is I am who I am because of the mentor I had. So professionally, I must pay it forward. And for me, if you have one, two, three lawyers that can say, I am this because of Dio, then professionally, that's what I want to be doing for the next 10 years, helping others achieve what they want to achieve professionally.
Okay. Final question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
If you could speak to the man you are now, today,
Okay.
what do you wish for him in the next 20, 25 years? What do you hope he becomes for the future that lies ahead?
Well, a few things. If you're talking 20 years, no pressure to the kids. I wouldn't mind being a granddad.
No
One,
pressure, kids.
no pressure, but it's 20 years. So if my kids are watching it, then my son will be 40 and my daughter will be 38. So no pressure. But I just want to be healthy and at peace. You get to an age, then you realize that there is nothing like peace. When your chakra is aligned and you wake up every day and you're peaceful, it could be just going for a walk in the Lagos streets, right? My gym is about 25 minutes from here. So I walk. I do it to get my steps in. I do it to just get a feel of the neighborhood. So what I would like is in 20 years to still be healthy enough to be able to walk to my gym, be healthy, be peace. Listen, the most important thing, I want my chakra aligned. Once your chakra is aligned, all else falls in place. And I want my kids to be happy. That's it.
Prioritizing peace and, of course, like
Yeah.
the children. That is really great. And so shall it be, Dayo.
Amen to that.
Thank you for this. This was a really nice chat. It's good to have a conversation with somebody I know, but over a
It is.
podcast and then like just
Yeah.
go deep dive
Yeah.
into some topics. This was really
Absolutely.
nice.
Thanks for
So
having me.
thanks for being here.
Thank you for spending time with us on Overnight Wisdom. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you pause, please leave a comment, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're feeling generous, a rating or review goes a long way in helping others find us too. Until next time, stay curious, stay tender, and may the wisdom you need find you exactly when you're ready.